based on the gun and how many rounds we fire. So to do that, we need to come across to the raycast controller, right? Because every time we fire a shot here, then what I want to do is access the game controller now, okay, and go through the instance to go after the shots per round. Now, if you remember, shots per round is an integer, it's a whole number. So if we want to reduce this by 1, all we have to do is a double minus sign at the end, and that will reduce the amount of shots per round. Now, if I just copy that for a second, because when we fire the gun, I want to lose a shell and lose a shot. But inside the if we've hit the code, then what I want to do is set that back to be 3 and reset the shells. And likewise, if I access the game controller through the instance again, then I want to increase the player score as well at this point, because I've actually scored a point. Now, I'm also going to increase through the instance the round score. There we go. And that will take care of the rules for the game controller. So this only happens when we actually hit the bird, but we always lose a shot if we've pressed the fire button. Okay, let's go back to the game controller, and I just want to make sure everything is as I need it to be. Right, so let's press play. 1 second, guys, I'm going to maximize this for you to make it easier for you to see. Now, I hold up the image target. There's the start text, and if I fire, missing the duck, you can see the shells go down. If I hit the duck, it goes back to 3. Okay, so now if we get down to 1 and then we miss the duck again, it doesn't go to 0, because in the show shells function here, look, we always have 1 on. But what I'm going to do is say if the shots per round is 0, then show the game over panel on top. So we don't really need to hide the last shell anyway. I mean, we can do if you want, just from a cosmetic point of view, but you won't really be able to see it through the game over panel anyway. Okay, now how is this happening then? Because you might think, well, we're not calling show shells every time we fire the button. It only appears in the show items text. So show shells is here, and then the function is called then, and it adjusts the shells. But how is it possible that when you fire the gun, it's calling this function again? Well, it's actually happening because show items is called inside the update statement, look. So every time this is called on the loop, between 30 and 60 frames a second, so the show items is called again, which will effectively call the show shells again, and that's how it's actually working and showing the shells. Okay, so now let's have a look at the actual shots per round, and if you miss 3, then we will lose a life. Okay, so in the update statement, just here after this else, so make sure you're after this bracket here. Okay, what I want you to do is add an additional little section now, and we're basically going to check the shots per round and check if the shots per round are the same as 0, meaning we don't have any left. Okay, so what do we want to do if the shots per round are 0? Well, first of all, let's get the shell and hide the first item in the array and set that to be false, okay? So we might as well do the tidy up and get rid of the last shell. Next, I want to start a coroutine, which I'm going to call lose life. Okay? And then after that, let's set the shots per round back to be 3 again. Okay, so now what we need to do is create this coroutine. Okay, so let's scroll down to where we are at the bottom here. And I want you to create a private enumerator again called lose life. Now, what's the first thing we want to do when this is called? Well, get hold of lives and reduce it. Okay, So we start with 2. The first time this is called after 3 shots have been fired is we want to lose a life. Okay? Now, if the lives are 0 at that point, like so, then basically we're dead. So I want to remove the fire button to equal false so that we can't continue to shoot. I'm also going to play a sound effect that will be kind of a game over sound effect. So I'll just put that in as 2 for now. We want to then show the game over panel. So let's set that active. So that can be set to be true as well. And then when the, we'll make sure lives is 0 so that it can't go past for whatever reason. There we go. And then what we want to do is if we look at the game over panel, which is here, if I just open that, we need to access this here, the 0. Now that's the score count points, it should be. So I want to set this value to be the score that the players achieved while playing the game. So let's just check if we have this score count points. If I look at my game controller, we don't actually have that in yet, so let's drop that in as well up at the top. It will just be a text item, so let's put it with the rest. Let's make it a public text, and it can be the game over score text. There we go, nice and easy for us to recognize. Okay, so let's go back to the scene. Oh, it won't load because it seems that we have an unexpected end of file error. So let's go to the end and see if I forgot to close something. The if, there we go. Okay, and while we're here, we need to actually do the return. So let's yield and return new, wait for seconds. Don't wait for any time at all, but I want that to happen at the end. So it wants to go there. Okay, so now we should have no errors in a second. There we go. I'm just going to minimize the audio source panel because it's a bit huge. Right, the game controller is now expecting the game over score text, and that is here. So let's drag that in. I'll just double check. Nope, wrong one. It's that one. The score counts points. There we go. Right, now I can hide the game over panel again. We've got the restart and the quit functions to do as well. Now we have on the raycast, there we go, down at the bottom, we've already got a quit function. So I'm just going to lift it out of there and pop that onto the game controller. Now, if you have left your button on the scene, the one up at the top to quit, if you've left that there, you'll now need to click on the button and drag in the game controller script instead of the raycasting one, and then assign the quit function there. Or you can just leave it on the raycasters if you want to copy a new version. It doesn't really matter to me. Right, so now all that mini error was just so that I could actually write the score into that game over bit. So the game over score text and the value of the text field now actually needs to be the player score. Now the player score, if you remember, is an integer. So what we need to do is pass the integer as a string. So let's get the player score, there we go, and convert it to be a string, like so. Okay, cool. So if we lose a life, if the lose life is called, then we lose a life. If we are at 0 at this point, then disable everything, update the score on the game over panel and show the game over panel and play a sound effect. And the sound effect I want to play is the game over jingle. So if I just go to the game controller, that's actually slot 1. So that's what that needs to be there. So just to test this, what I'm going to do is set the lives to be 1 up at the top. There we go. And I'm going to miss the duck 3 times. That will mean that my score count will go down, and my shot count, sorry, and when my shot count hits 0, it will call the coroutine to lose a life. Because I'm on 1 already, when lose life is called, my lives will hit 0, which will trigger this if statement. Lives will remain at 0, and from here, and then I will disable the fire button, play the sound effect for game over, show the game over panel, and set my score onto the screen. Now, we haven't hooked the scoring up properly yet, so that will just probably remain at 0. Let's give it a quick run and see what happens. So here we go. I'll just get the first bird. Okay, so the lives are at 1, which is great. I fire, shots go down. Just knock the volume down slightly, guys. Fire 1 more time and I should hit game over. Perfect. Now, the score is actually correct here because I did shoot 1 duck, but we didn't update the score count on the screen. So let's do that next. Let's make it so that we can update the score every time we hit the duck. So that's really simple to do. All we have to do is come up to the update statement. There we go. It's a little bit, looks huge on this screen, guys, but I'm sure it's easier for you guys to read. So here's the update statement, and here is where I'm going to actually get a hold of the text. Let me just double check the name. So on the score text, it's the hit count. So the hit count is score count text. Score count text will be the game object text component. Then we're going to set the value to equal the player score, which is an integer converted to a string. Okay, cool. So now the score should go up on the screen as I shoot. Let's give it a run. There we go. Nope. It's really difficult to see with the paper in the way. There we go. 1, and then 2. 1 more time. 3. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to miss and die and make sure that the game over text has the same 3. Okay, everything's working well, guys. Right, so what happens if I lose a life? Well, let's bring the dog back into play. There we go. Click on the dog and bring him back in. I also want to bring in the fire button temporarily just to line him up. Right, so select the dog and go to the animation panel and click create. And we're going to make a dog animation. Right, now after a second, let's press record and copy the current position. There we go. Now, after a second, I want the dog to slide in over the top of the fire button, like so. Okay, let's use the middle mouse button to scroll out, go to 2 seconds and add another keyframe, which is here. Okay, and then scroll out to 3 seconds and then add another keyframe, but paste the component values to make him go back. Okay, now when I press play, he'll slide in for a second, remain for a second, and slide back out. Like so. Okay, cool. Let's stop recording, go to the animator, and double click the dog anim and take loop off. Save the animation, come back to the scene, and hide the 2 items again. Okay, now if we go to the game controller, the dog laugh is element 2, so that's 0, 1, 2 in the array. Okay, now on the game controller, down to lose a life, which is here. Now if we are dead, then we call game over. But what happens if we're not dead? Well, else what I want to do is disable the fire button so you can't continue to fire. There we go. Oh. Okay. Then I'm going to play the sound effect in slot 2 to make the dog laugh. We then need to activate the dog. Okay, now we need to give the dog a chance to laugh at us. So why don't we yield and return a new wait for seconds, give him 3 seconds for the animation to play, and then what we'll do is we'll slide him back off. So GUI dog can then disappear. Set active to be false. The fire button needs to be set active again so we can continue to play. And I'm going to reset the shot count as well back to 3. Okay, cool. So here we go. Set the lives back to be 2. Save and play. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to miss on purpose, believe it or not. Oh, the dog has already slid in. That's because if we look at the game controller, it was okay earlier, but now we don't want to automatically activate the dog in the show items or the hide items because we've now added an animation.